West of What is a roundtable conversation inspired by Mother Earth's call for more landwork ceremonies to happen. This is a podcast where spirituality lands into politics, history, culture, and more, because land is where we all meet. We want to know how we can come into greater connection with the land and each other, and how we can all move forward with integrity. We believe the answers and solutions will come from many voices, from the truths that happen inside of our togetherness. Hello and welcome to West of What. Today we're speaking to Melanie Harris, who is a yoga, tantra teacher, holistic healer and coach. Bamel trained as a medical microbiologist and in international overseas trade. She has worked in the commercial world as an international marketing and business development director. She spent 15 years training young leaders around the globe as a hobby. A journey led into the realm of exploring spirituality, our existence as a soul. Ever the scientist, Mel explored the ancient religious text, challenged her own thinking around existence, and started on her esoteric path, which eventually meant the alchemy of living was born. What an introduction. Our intention for this episode is that you deepen your understanding of the meaning of existence. Mel, thank you so much for coming on the show. I mean, like, where to begin? What a range. Most people, there's a funny thing, isn't there, between science and spirituality? Like, I always feel that they're the same thing, because they're both about exploring what the meaning of life is and trying to understand it. But certainly in the West, it feels like there's an identity of like, you're either a scientist or you're into spirituality. So it's really interesting to have you on the show.
That was definitely the journey right at the beginning, even when I was at university, and sitting even with those that were doing philosophy. How can a scientist be looking at the cosmos in any shape or form? And yet that is obviously a science in itself, astrology and astronomy and all of that. So for me, from childhood, there never was a conflict for me with science, with spirituality, because I was already, as a child, I was already seeing things that didn't exist. To the normal mind, we had residents in our old farmhouse. It was sat on the site of an old monastery. Had a special connection with the land and the animals, and that my family didn't understand that. I had no one in my family that had channeling in that way, or had experience of mediumship or visions or anything like that. And then off I went because I wanted to be a vet. So it was veterinary that took me really into the sciences. But at that point, I hadn't got the one grade. I had to, I think, 2 A's and a B, and you had to have 3 A's or something at that time for veterinary. And so I didn't get in. So I was like, what do I do? I may as well carry on with the biological sciences. And that covered such a vast area, because it went from genetics to microbiology, whatever. And you were doing chemistry and physics as part of all of that anyway, going through it. And for me, there was never any conflict, because for me, science was looking into the most microcosmic form of existence and the questions that come from that, and looking into the most macrocosmic forms of existence and looking into the questions of that. And that's what we're doing with spirituality. It's no different, is it? We're wanting to understand the existence, as you said, the meaning and purpose for living, the existence, the reason for existence, and what that is, and to find our place in that. So yeah, so it's no different for me anyway. But yes, it was all the way through the journey.
Amazing. And do you feel like you found the meaning of existence?
Oh, that's such a broad and vast question, is that not? So I think we're born into our humanness for a reason. And that journey within our humanness keeps us searching. And there are levels and degrees of expansion, of understanding of ourselves, of expansion energetically, of understanding ourselves that we go into. And I believe they can go further and further. At some point, great masters or blessed people, doesn't even have to be great masters, can be very simple people, have that ability just to be connected into that universal divine consciousness and just to go there. And the rest of us are traveling through something, through a journey to reach that. So we have these moments, we're gifted, even if you're not spiritually driven, you're gifted to having those moments of like, wow, when you look at a sunset or you drive, like I live in Scotland, so when you drive at this time of the year through the Highlands, the lighting and the colours, it's quite incredible. And you just sit there and you're like, wow. And you feel this huge expansion. And sometimes I've even had, like tears of joy pouring down my face just because I'm experiencing something really divinely beautiful and mystical. And we all have that. We have that in the moment that we fall in love. We have that in the moment we see a child born. We have that in all these beautiful, unique, special moments that we connect into that universal love, that divine universal consciousness. And that's then what drives us forward to want to understand if we're open, if we allow ourselves to be open to what we really are, rather than what we contain and limit ourselves to, or are taught to contain and limit ourselves to in our experiencing. So, yes and no.
The existence is expansion.
I think it's like, and working with all the meditations, and if working and teaching meditation and being in meditation and all the vast range of meditations, it's kind of like, you have that universal point of consciousness, you're focusing on something. And it's like the mind, the human mind, the noisy mind, needs to be concentrated on one thing to allow the consciousness to, or the awareness of your consciousness to expand into the infinite aspect of what that consciousness is, because the consciousness is infinite, the divine consciousness is infinite. For me, it's an expansion. Yes.
So you have many different modalities. Was there a particular modality for you where everything clicked, or did all those modalities play their part equally into being part of your journey in this awareness?
I would turn around and say that every modality up until Tantra was a journey into opening that awareness. And I was formulating my perception of what it means, or what creation might be, or my esoteric thinking, how do we come into manifestation? How is all this? What's the purpose for being? And when I went off to my first Tantra course or program, I actually went because I felt very disconnected from my feminine energy at the time. I was working in business with a lot of big burly businessmen who were in very logical mindsets. And back those days in Scotland, and certainly around the globe, if you're working things like manufacturing, it was very masculine orientated mentality, and you're having to work at that level with CEOs. So you have to be able to be very vertical, or you'll get trampled all over, and you have to hold your own in that. So what I didn't realize in that process was that I was very much in my masculine energy and was struggling in my relationship. So the reason I went off to do my first tantric course is I'd read a few books by Daniel Odier and went, wow, I really feel something beautiful in this tantric teaching, and wanted to explore it for reconnecting with my femininity and my feminine nature. And when I went on the first course, it was very practical. I was actually going into massage to connect with energies, and I had no idea. And the first lecture came in about the esoteric teachings of the universe, and I sat there and I went, thank you. Thank you, because it was in alignment with everything I had come to formulate and to understand. And so that was it. That was me on my tantric journey. Within 6 months, I packed up my business consultancy, and that was it. That was so everything else I'd done, my spiritual journey had been going along beside my, my 3D life, so my everyday life, so to speak. But when I hit Tantra, that was it. It was like, no, I'm in fully. That's it. I want to just go into this, and I don't want to really connect in the other aspects that pull me away from my spiritual purpose, that pull me away from my understanding and my spiritual practice. Yeah. And it was just a homecoming. So the way it was described, it's a very much Tantra will describe itself as an esoteric teaching as science. Yeah, so the scientist comes back to the science, but it's esoteric, and they call it esoteric science.
Wow. So Tantra, can I just confirm? Because Tantra is a broad word.
Oh, yes.
Spirituality these days. And it's actually part of the reason I wanted you to come on the show, because it's one of those words that activates people and triggers people. And there's what I call the neo Tantra scene, which is very sexy. And then there's the traditional Tantra scene. So where did you enter, and what type of Tantra are you talking about?
So with the schools that I've trained with, they are from the authentic lineage, but translated into a way that's easier for Western people to digest. So meaning that you're not having to learn tons and tons of Sanskrit and then try and translate and understand what you're doing in there. So it's presented by people that speak in a European way, with a European mindset, to be able to understand that, but it's from authentic teachings, from authentic traditions. So I would say it's the authentic yoga, what I call authentic yogic tantra. And then everyone goes, does that mean you just practice yoga? It's like, okay, then we even have a misunderstanding of what yoga is, because yoga is union, and all yoga involves many, many practices. So to bring you into union with yourself, that's what yoga itself means. But everyone thinks yoga is the asanas and the physical movements, so it's not. It's this vast science of different technologies and methodologies that suit different people and their different personalities, to be able to start to go within and start to understand who they are. And if you then say Tantra over yoga, no one really knows what came first, Tantra or yoga.
I guess Tantra.
I have a funny feeling. Yes, the belief is that most of the energetic tantric work was stripped out by the Vedantics when they came in and took over India about 400 years ago. And because for them, everything in this realm is fake. It's an illusion. So you only want to focus on going within, going into accessing your divine universal consciousness, your spirit essence. And so therefore they stripped all of the energy work out of the tantric practices, but used it to maintain the body, physicality wise, and for whilst they're sitting meditating, they need to have some form of keeping the body fit and healthy within that. So they stripped it all out. But yes, so if you ask me, to me, what is Tantra, which I think is a better way to ask it, because every person that goes on their journey will give a different answer, because each person's journey with Tantra is unique, because we're all very unique in our makeup, of who we are, from personality to gifts to strengths to weaknesses. So Tantra offers something for all people to, depending on what your preference is. Now I can share those things later. So for me, Tantra is magic. Very simply.
I love that.
Yeah. So as a child, I could not get enough of things like J.R. Tolkien and all of these beautiful books which had a spiritual message in them. And I really needed to believe in the fairies and the elementals and the and I guess there was a reason for that, because I was connected into them as a with the spirituality. But I really wanted to believe magic was true. And then you're spending your whole life in the normal world, the Western culture, having all of that absolutely whacked out of you. And you're looking for it in books or movies or whatever else. And Tantra basically is how learning to understand how the universe, from the divine consciousness to us in our manifest world and realm and form, comes into being. And how, if you understand that, you can utilize those energies to live your life with more grace and ease, to connect more deeply into your divine true nature, remember yourself more deeply, while being in this world, of this world, and celebrating the divine beauty of creation that God has created, rather than trying to run away from it back into the divine consciousness. Because you chose to come in for this journey. You chose to come into this lifetime. You chose to travel through what you're traveling through, to experience what you're experiencing, I believe. Otherwise, there's no other purpose or reason for it. Otherwise you just stay in divine universal consciousness. Why would you want to come in? So there's a process of that. It's the divine experiencing itself. And so in creation, everything that is manifest, everything that is outside of or expanded from, if you like, the divine universal consciousness is energy. So if you're a scientist, you know that everything is energy. It cannot exist. Everything is a form of energy. Yeah. So you learn how energy works, the laws of energy, but you don't just learn the basic energies like electricity, gravity, all these things. You learn about the energy of your being. You learn about the subtle energies and much more refined energies. And we think we need machines and technologies to identify, feel, perceive that in the Western world. Whereas, of course, we know, those that are on this journey, that absolutely not. You can access that energy. It is within you. It is all around you. And you can learn how to do that. And so for me, that's magic. That's the magic, telepathy, feeling someone from a distance, being able to send healing from a distance, being able to move things, when people watch me doing my Tantra massage and, and I move away and I'm standing the other side of the room and I'm just sending energy and the person's dancing in that energy. They're like, oh, that's magic. Yes, it is, but it isn't. It's science. it's learning to work with energy. So for me, Tantra is this beautiful, beautiful magic that allows you to really evolve the natural gifts you've been given, to work through the low energies that hold us back, the traumas, the egos, whatever, and allow us to build the resonance, the more positive energies, to live life very fully here in this plane, while really expanding and connecting into our sacred space of our heart, into our universal consciousness, and therefore live very harmoniously in our journey. Yeah, there you go.
Beautiful, beautiful description of Tantra. And very different from the impression that people have from the neo Tantra scene. I'm interested in, like, how does the authentic Tantra scene feel about the neo Tantra scene that's going on in modern spirituality? Not that I have a problem with the neo Tantra scene. I don't. It's part of this show is about trying to address the fact that, like, we're in these crazy cross-pollination times where suddenly, these ancient esoteric practices are being capitalized in the West and taken in new directions, which I think is probably quite a good thing. And I'm one of those people, like, I run land tantra, so I've taken that word as well. But I felt like I had to take that word because I felt like there was no other way to describe the land ceremony work that I do that captures so much, like, as you said, Tantra covers deep healing and magic and relationship. It covers so many things. And I don't think there's another word that expands across all of those things other than Tantra. So that's why I took it. But I just wondered, I wondered how the authentic Tantra scene feels about the neo Tantra that's all about sexual energy, really.
I'll come into that, because actually it's pretty beautiful, because that's how I came up to you at Elements Festival, was because you called it land tantrums. Of course, I was curious as to why. I wanted to know why. And having experienced the ceremony, I knew what I felt it was, but I was curious as to why you had picked the name land tantra. And you said it was a choice that you'd made, and I was like, oh wow! And when you explained to me why, I was like, that's perfect. You actually picked the perfect name, because it is Tantra that you are doing with the land. Yeah, for me, it is Tantra that you are doing with the land, because you're working with the resonance of the land. You're working with the essence of the land, the spirits of the land. And that really is Tantra. Well, that's what it's all about, working with these different energy resonances, which we might label spirits, or we might label gods or goddesses, or we might label, but they're resonances of energy that have an impact, a quality, a spirit, a personality, whatever. And so we'll say, you know, like you say, with the land, we have guardians of the land, and we also have the elementals of the land, and we have the spirits of the plants, and we have the spirits of the trees. And they're all energy resonances. They have personalities, they have qualities, and they have a distinction, and they have an interaction. They have a consciousness with which we're working with. So if when you were describing land tantra to me, why you picked it, I was like, yes, absolutely. You picked, you know, that's one of the ones that's a definite plus, definite thumbs up for. But the how do we feel about the neo tantra? It's interesting because when I first was looking for tantra, I was looking at most of the things I was coming across as neo tantra, and it just did not chime for me at all. And it didn't chime for me because I felt it was what I was coming across. I'm not saying all neo tantra is this, but what I was coming across was something where people have taken something without the true understanding of what they're taking and implementing it into a different package and trying to share that. And that was giving authentic tantra a bad name. Yeah. So because there are rituals and practices in tantra that, I mean, the teachings around tantric sexuality doesn't talk about, you know, polyamory or monogamy or anything like that. It just talks about how you use energy in your lovemaking to come into deeper and more profound union. Because so you learn how to you're basic making love at the level of the consciousness of the different chakras. Yeah. So the higher you go, you're not making love, you're merging. You're not physical, you're in a union. So you have to be able to activate those chakras, and you have to be able to enter into those states of consciousness. So most people that are going are not learning any techniques on how to do that, how to activate their chakras, how to enter into those states of consciousness. And they're just going into the sexuality, and they're coming from it from what we would say the Svadhisthana consciousness, the sacred consciousness of emotion and lust, and not from the more evolved levels of consciousness, you know. So it's going to get very muddy. It's going to get very muddy and maybe very messy. And yet in the same breath, if you can help people to move from a very static, a non-conscious way of interacting and learn to start seeing each other more deeply, connecting more deeply, finding a deeper way of being intimate, and actually finding more connection through that, and that love making then starts to take you into higher levels of consciousness, how could you criticize? Yeah, because actually it's a gift, it's a journey, it's a pathway. So tantric sexuality is a pathway to divine union. But it needs to be, if it's not supported with a strong way of moving energies, those energies stay stuck down in that emotional chakra, and it can become very muddy and chaotic for people. You know?
Which you see on the neo tantra scene, for sure. You know, I think it's worth saying that your brilliant description of tantra as magic, magic needs to be taken seriously. It's the root meaning of the word magic is the same root meaning as the word power. It means to be able. And, you know, my experience with land and spirit is actually true magic isn't given. It's not something to be messed with. Like, it's not something to just play around with. It's something to take very seriously and learn how to do safely and learn how to do in integrity. Otherwise you're gonna go down a path that is activating of shadow and ego and other things, you know. That's what I see a little bit in not in all parts of the neo scene, but just unheld space for tantra doesn't seem like a good idea to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole point, because you're saying that, you know, it's like if you even go into the definition of esoteric and exoteric, spirituality. You know, exoteric spirituality is the spirituality that was created, known more as religions, for the lowest common denominator, for the people that were not really that bothered about a spiritual calling, that were living their life within this realm more focused, more fully. And that was to maintain a certain level of spirituality within the planet, a certain level of spiritual connection, a certain level of morality, a certain level of community, you know, how you actually function. Whereas the esoteric teachings were for those that had a calling, that there was really a calling, you know, towards that wisdom, that knowledge, that desire to understand. And the reason that some of because you'll hear a lot of people in modern day time, because everyone believes they have a right, they pay money for something, they have a right to receive. I don't agree with that.
Wow.
If I pay money, I have a right to have a certificate and be qualified, and I don't agree with that either. And I explain why, because the journey should be that you are evolving, and you are evolved enough to hold space, to channel, to whatever your work is. When you are evolved enough to understand that in its depths, then you're ready to work with it, not just because you paid for a certificate. Yeah, some people aren't ready for it, and other people are ready for it immediately. They're already there. They're you know, they've done work in previous incarnations or whatever, and they already have that there. So that for me, it's about the work you've done that allows you to have the understanding and the depth and level of respect and consciousness and understanding for what you do to deliver that or hold space with that in a way that is honorable and sacred and respecting of those teachings. And so in Tantra, there are different teachings revealed at higher and higher levels of your evolution, because then you are spiritually mature enough. It's like a child growing up. You're going to put an atomic bomb with the button of an atomic bomb in a child's hand and go, here you go, play with that. And it blows itself up and everybody else up. I mean, you're working with very powerful, as you know, we're working with very powerful energies when we go and become more and more strong as a channel, more and more strong working with the energies. They become more and more powerful. What you do with that depends on your level of evolution, and that is how you've worked with yourself, with your consciousness, with your triggers, how aware you are of yourself in that journey, knowing to being able to own what's yours, take responsibility for that, to respect what you're doing. And that's why in Tantra there is a lot of ceremony and ritual, because the ceremony and the ritual creates the sacredness, it creates the honoring. You know, it's the same with land. I mean, you know, when I was witnessing and participating with you in that land ceremony, it was so powerful. You know, I mean, I was connecting in deep into the roots of the earth, into some very ancient wisdom that was coming up through me into the cosmos. And the lovely lady the other side, who had a tent next to me camping, who was the other side of the circle, you were in the middle between us, she was the other way. She was bringing the light from the cosmos down into the earth. So it was like and it was a really ancient, you know, entity that came forth and was speaking light language through me. And I was like, wow, you know, is this, you know, and it's like, am I just connecting into an ancient entity of this land? Or is this, you know, a connection to me? And if you have too much ego, if you're not evolved enough in that, you'll go, oh, that's my guide, they're coming here for me. But actually, maybe it's not. And actually, what you're doing is connecting into the entity of that land and being very honored that they're speaking through you in that moment. You know, it's like, so it's, you know, and in modern day times, so traditional Tantra will kind of go, we've regressed a bit. Everyone wants to hear that we've evolved a bit, but, you know, we've regressed a bit, you know, because we're in Kali Yuga, and this is meant to be the least spiritual time before the opening into the new beginnings, you know. So many people are being activated, you know, into spirituality as a calling back, ready for this evolution. And we don't know. I mean, there's huge debates about where we're at in the point of Kali Yuga. Have we already crossed into the golden age or not? Are we still at this level? But what we'll say is that people are working from, I'm going to say things that are not politically correct now, but here we go.
Go for it. This is what happens.
But
this is the place for
it. Exactly. But there is a huge need for people to be seen. There's a huge belief that they have a right to everything. without responsibility is what I see going on around.
Oh, the right without responsibility. What a statement.
Yeah.
So, not
all, but there is in the general ethos, this is what I see, and what I perceive and many perceive. And so it's like, I have a right to this, I have a right to this, I have a right to this, but there's no responsibility behind. There's a wake, we're doing a festival, and everyone's left all their rubbish and litter all over the place. No, I'm not talking about elements, everyone there was very good and cleared up, but but everyone, it's like this kind of, do you know what I mean? I have a right to have this, I have a right, I've paid a certificate, I am now, after 10 days, I am a proper facilitator of this. Are you? Where's your practice?
Yeah.
Where's your practice? I've been practicing Tantra now for 15 years, daily. I do maybe 2 to 3 hours of practice in that. I then have my shamanic side, because this is something about the merging of things that I work with as well. And I do my practices with that. And that's 15 years. And I still see myself as a baby. I still see myself in the kindergarten of this journey. Yeah.
Which is wise.
It's
sensible. Yeah. I feel like why I love the land, like when you land pilgrimage, that there is no choice. You do not get to do the ceremony until you've done the work. That's the way the guardians of the land work. And the work is hard. Many times before a land pilgrimage, you have to, for example, the journey that me and Ekbalu met on, there was a code of fairness that everybody on that journey had to hold. And if you were not able to hold, and there was tests in your everyday life before it, and if you were not able to pass those tests, you weren't on that journey. And the facilitator of that journey, my dear friend Solara, my guides told me that. And it was my test of fairness was incredibly hard. Like, it broke my heart. And my guides were like, yeah, but you had to hold the code of fairness. Otherwise you weren't coming. And Solara said that 10 people dropped out of that journey a month before.
I know. So I know just now there's a group of people I know, they're heading off on pilgrimage to France, to the Magdalene.
Ooh, nice.
And she just said, she goes, guys, most of you won't make it there. And already 3 people have dropped out of that journey. So just, reiterating what you're saying in that. And we run, up here in Scotland, we run ceremonies on the equinox and the solstice. My partner is very much a guardian of the land up here. And so we hold these outdoor ceremonies, and people are like, oh, but it's Scotland. It might rain. It might whatever, And you're like, yeah, it's Scotland. It most certainly probably will rain. And I remember we had the 7 planetary alignment. That was in January, February, and we did a celebration for that alignment. And we were in the outdoors, completely in the outdoors. It was Scottish weather in February, so we had wind, we had rain, we had gale force wind, we had snow, and we were just sitting in a circle around 2 fires, wrapped up with all our waterproofs, drumming and singing and drumming away and honouring the land and being in ceremony of the land. And we were there from 7 in the evening till 5 the following morning, and then it was, time, the last bit of wood had been placed on grandfather fire, and it was time to clear. And people were like, oh, I don't know about that. But like you were saying, there is a journey. Actually being in the elements, this is what our ancestors did. They were in those elements, so it's like, we're way too feeds into what I was saying, wanting the rights without the responsibilities. People become very soft, want things served on a plate. And, so what I find in the authentic Tantra, I don't have a huge following. I don't have a huge following because it's work.
Yeah.
And you have to face yourself, and you will be tested, and you are pushed. You are absolutely pushed. I even, through my whole journey, there's always these spiritual tests that come up. But then about 3.5 years ago, I hit a really big dark night of the soul. But I was meant to, because it was a breakdown of my ego at a new level, and it was, but all the triggers I've ever had in my life, all the fears, or everything came to a surface in one go. It was like, woof, bang, here. And my physical body went into a freeze. And I was like, okay, you're putting me here, and I've now got to do this work. And then everyone's going, oh, but you should be running workshops. You haven't put a workshop on. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. I said, I am not in a place to be running workshops right now. I've been asked to do some very deep work. And until that deep work is done, I'm not ready to start to facilitate and do things. And about a year and a half later, I've been working through all this, and people say, Mel, come on, get a workshop up. And I was feeling the pressure from the outside from my existing students. So it's a bit like you're saying, this fairness. And I was like, well, I can put one up. And I started typing. The next day, typing to put the workshop online. The next day, I tripped over on the ice, fractured both hands. No, you haven't heard us. You haven't finished yet. So it's really, really listening to spirit, and it will, and the people go, oh, that's coincidence. It's like, no, it's not coincidence. That's saying spirit saying, sit down. You're not ready yet. You're still in hibernation. And again, if you can channel and talk to your spirit and work with them, then they're sitting there and they're saying that to you. So you're like, okay, I'm hearing you, and you sit back and you respect it, and you respect the journey that you've got to go through and what you're doing. But I see so many people, the other thing that you see a lot of in these circles that don't come from holding so much of the sacredness, it's a bit maybe of a money making, or people see it as, it sells well, sex sells well, that kind of thing.
Sells, yeah. Even in spirituality, sex sells.
Absolutely. And what you see that with that lack of that grounding, that foundational work in all of that, is this huge expectation for things without creating foundational work, without creating the sacredity and the sanctity of what you're doing. That holding of that space is a great honor. That's why we have initiations. That spirit saying it's time. You're ready. And people go, oh, you don't need initiations. I'll just copy what that person's done. I've been and done that course. I'll take that material. I'll put it out there. And there's no sacredness in that. They might act to sacredness. I think there's a guy somewhere online that does unicorn sessions, and he has everyone wearing the unicorn hats, and they're all laughing and giggling. When I've watched a video of that, I don't feel any sacred spirituality in that. It's not judgmental. I just don't feel anything there. People are paying a fortune to go to these unicorn, courses. Don't get me wrong. The energy of the unicorn exists. Of course it does, but not in that particular presentation of things. And I feel that is a deep dishonor. And I'm talking about the unicorn course, but when people take material from other people, when they take those sacred teachings without actually honoring initiation, without really going and doing the work behind it, or spirit giving that initiation, that grace of God, that grace from the divine that comes in, and you suddenly have that. It's, that's a sudden awakening. You feel yourself evolve to another level of consciousness, another deeper level of perception. You're like, thank you for that grace, thank you for that grace and that honor that comes through. So yes, I feel that that's very lacking, the desire to put the effort into the pilgrimage, as you say, to receive.
I think that you could say it's colonialism, you could say it's Amazon. It's the way we're living in the West, isn't it? It's like we've got used to thinking, my dad's a very anti-instant manifestation. Like, why do you want instant manifestation? Why don't you want the most beautiful form, which takes time? And it's and also some things are not for you. That's the other thing, is like, if you don't, why do you want to do the things that, like, the gates of initiation are your gate?
Yes.
Unique.
It's your unique journey. But again, this is about worthiness. And again, if you take that back, why is there so much sense of lack of worthiness? We've got higher rates of suicide, higher rates of depression, whatever, because it's like, when you had to work into something, you put the discipline into something, there's a reward in that in itself. And even if you aren't the best, you've done your best. I don't know, there's something in that essence, you've put in that work, you've done your best. Sorry, I cut into you there.
No, I'm loving.
Yeah. So there is something in this culture where it, the easiness, the commercialism, the consumerism, because that's what they want. That's what that's what's wanted from the powers that be, is this constant turnover of consumerism that creates profitability, but it takes out all the meaning. We could go into all the point of government was there to hold the rights and responsibilities of the people. Now it's not. It's not about the people at all, or the land. It's about feeding the bottom line of a commercial process, or a darker force maybe even behind that. But it's not about bringing that ethos in. So the more people throw away. I mean, I was laughing. I was sitting with one of those until about whatever the year was when they changed into, is it that digital analog, you had analog TVs and digital TVs. I still had one of those huge, great big square TVs in my corner that I'd had since my university days, because it worked, and it was still working until they changed it over. Why replace something that's working? I didn't need something sexy and new. It was still working. Now, they build it to disintegrate. So that's the mentality that actually young people are being born into. It's like very quickly throw away, throw away, throw away. Give me, but throw away, throw away, throw away. Don't get me wrong, not all young people. There's lots of young people out there really connecting with land and spirituality as well. But that's the drive of that consumer orientation. And there is very little, you build a house, if you go back to the land, if you had communities originally, the community helped each other build their homes, build their barns. There were communal buildings. You did it together. You put that effort in together. That built the connections. You had your arguments. You had your disagreements. You made up. You built it. That was part of that process. And those buildings stayed for a very long time. Yeah. Whereas now it's like, where is the energy that you put in? So if we come back to magic. With magic, you always have to give energy in the process of manifestation. You can channel divine energy if you're really, if you're coming for pure and you're doing it for the divine, and you're doing it, but if you're wanting to manifest for yourself something, your energy is going into that ceremony, into that ritual, into that process. Yeah. So it's like, well, what are you putting in? When you were saying about that immediate manifestation, see the amount of, when The Secret and all that came out, it was like, because from a tantric perspective, A, it wasn't correct, and B, it's like it's misleading people into doing that. But it was like people come to
Sorry, can you say that again? From a tantric perspective, The Secret is not correct.
The Secret was not correct. I don't know if they've upgraded it, but it wasn't correct, because it was about turning around and saying, right, I want to manifest the perfect man in my life. So you just do all these affirmations. But if your consciousness does not believe you deserve, for whatever reason, and considering that most of the population in the West play the unworthiness process, then your consciousness is rejecting that. So you're actually creating a bigger divide, because you're manifesting what you believe. And if your belief is I'm not worthy of that, you're actually creating a greater gap. Yeah, because you can't just override the brain by saying I believe. Yeah, because if your true belief here is not in alignment with that belief that you're stating, the true belief is what manifests.
Yeah, and I think with relationships as well, when we're looking for that soulmate, you're not going to necessarily manifest what you want. You're going to manifest what you are, and you're going to keep bringing these situations and relationships in over and over until you learn your lesson and you heal and grow. So I'm a big believer in that. And I think as a species, humans are creatures of immediate gratification. So we want immediate success through work, sex, spirituality, relationships, and we always want the quick, easy route. And it's never the way to go. Even for something like a dopamine hit, we'll have a coffee to quickly wake up, but there's other more slower ways to do things where you can get a slow dopamine release. If you have an ice bath, for example, your dopamine release lasts for 4 hours. It's extended. It's like the best thing that you can do. And the same with sex. It's like there's things like pornography and everything now, which is just giving people that immediate release. And I think this is where neo-tantra is important, even though it is abused. It's about teaching people as well. It's that delayed gratification, to not abuse your sexual energy. And for me, that's really what got me into Tantra. And I completely see the neo-Tantra side, how there's a lot of ego and it can be very predatory and toxic as well. But there's an element of it where it's just tapping into your sexual energy and learning not to abuse it and to harness it and to spread it around your body and to give and to receive with someone else as well. That really is a beautiful experience, and it can help us, achieve heightened states of consciousness as well. Yeah, so it's a very interesting topic, and we become these habits of wanting this quick fix, whether it's scrolling on social media and drinking alcohol or taking drugs or smoking. People don't actually acknowledge why they're doing it, but it's just to give that dopamine hit a quick fix, and that's actually the problem with today's society, because no one wants to get up early and do some yoga and do some push-ups and stargaze and sun gaze and do all these things that are such a natural way to do that for ourselves. We just want the quick solution. We want the doctor to prescribe us something and just swallow it to make us feel good. Yeah.
Yeah, no, very much. I mean, the next thing on my lips was actually to be about the manifestation of partners. So, and you're absolutely spot on, because that's the other common one. Oh, I've asked for the perfect partner. Well, how did your perfect partner look? Oh, well, they've got this and this and these and these and these qualities. Okay, do you have those qualities?
Yeah. Yep.
Hello.
Yeah.
So do you need to do that work first? So actually, the person, as you said, the person you've manifested in is coming in to help you do the work in that area, to show that up for you. So so it's exactly that what you're saying. That's why I was laughing with The Secret, because people then just sit there and go, but that's not what I was putting on order.
Yeah.
I was ordering up. So absolutely, yes, my partner is he did about I think 5 or 7 years working with Wim Hof, doing all the ice baths, and he used to lead people up the mountains. So they would actually trek up into the Alps, and then they would trek onto the lakes, and then they would dig big, cut a big hole in the ice, and they would do that, with in shorts. So they had to do that whole trek, and then they would trek down having done the ice bath, and then they would they would pop into the pub for their beer or whatever, or their glass of wine, and that the serotonin hit. But yeah, he used to do all of that, and it was the whole part of the journey. That's so that's even. And you're saying, when we're just running the equinox ceremonies, we try to bring something that is a bit of a journey for people to do. It's an effort, and then the reward of that effort is so much greater, as well.
Yeah, it's scientifically proven as well, like someone who genuinely built a business from scratch and built that for years, or studied at university for years, and that feeling they get, that sense of accomplishment at the very end of it, that feeling they get in their brain, that slow release, it's literally why we're here as human beings, and it's the best feeling you can possibly get. But if someone is going to pay your way through, and maybe you inherit your dad's business and it's things like that, you don't get that sense of achievement. And as you grow up, you're going to feel this slight bit of emptiness, because you just know you haven't quite fulfilled your potential. And yeah, the ones that really grind it and they're built from the bottom up, from scratch, the sense of achievement that they get at the end is priceless.
Yeah, it's interesting, because I come from a family that's self-employed. Part of my father went into my grandfather's business, but he was meant to go to uni. My grandfather was like, no, you're coming into the family business. But my father then built it, further than that. My mother set up her own businesses as well, and my brother runs his own business. He runs kite surfing clinics around the world, and then I have my own. I've had my own consultancy and leadership and team building, and then I did this. So it's kind of interesting. It's like a family. Yeah, it's passed down, and you do that building, but that's the creation process. That's what we are. We're creators, and that's the creation process. And when we and that what we call work that you put in is not. It's part of the birthing. It's part of the creation process. So it's parenting. Yeah, so it's really, so I'm just sitting there as I'm saying that, going, yes, it's very much, that's why we get that reward, because we're creators creating.
Yeah. And even me, I just came back from a holiday, and I spent a bit of it with Kahreela. And I was someone who went on holidays every year, like really nice holidays, and you kind of take it for granted. And this particular holiday I went on, I hadn't been overseas for 6 years, and there's been a bit of turmoil in my life, and it was just such a slog to get to this holiday. And every single day, I just had so much gratitude, and I felt so good. And it was the best holiday I've ever been on, even though I've gone on, like, if you look at it on paper, I've gone on better holidays. But this was just the best holiday I've ever been on from start to finish, because it was such a challenge for me to get there, and I really just embraced it so much more. So it was that sense of, I had to work hard to get there and everything just holding so much more weight. And I just felt so grateful every single day. And even though I've gone on better holidays, I never really, I took it for granted because it was easy. It was easy just to get away. There wasn't a family then. I had more money then, all these kinds of things. But yeah, so just another example of how it really just comes back down to perspective, right? It's like two people can have the exact same experience in life, and one person can feel like they overaccomplished and one person can feel like they underachieve just purely because of a perspective or an expectation they set on themselves. And I think it's really nice as well when you go to some of these third world places and you see these kids just playing with a rock and they're having the time of their life, and I keep giving a new toy to my daughter just because I can't help it. I love her so much, but they just get over it so quick. And I'm just like, oh, if you could see these kids just playing with this one rock and having the time of their life, yeah, it's just a human thing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when growing up as kids in the countryside, because I grew up on land, we have an old farm, and but that was it, because you were out on the land, so you were always creating your toys. That's you're outside, and you got called in at night. My parents would be searching for us, saying, where are they? But that's what you did. You built dens. You created things. You did all of that. But yeah, it goes as well into this whole journey of relationships. That's why I was saying there's a really good place for Neo Tantra. It's just like make sure that it's that
use your space holder well for Neo Tantra.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's the same for relationships. What do people do here and now? If you look on social media at the noise that chatters through the social media, you constantly hear a theme being taken up as a way to pass the buck. He's a narcissist.
The narcissist thing, like on social media, everybody's a narcissist.
I mean, it's like they take one thing and it's a way of passing the buck. It's like, or
lack of accountability.
Yes, exactly. Or all men do this, or men don't see this, or women don't see that. That's not my experience. My experience is that we're human beings. And that it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. Yes, there's some traits, there's some natural energies, but all of us have the masculine and feminine energy with us anyway. The whole point in Tantra is to awaken that Kundalini Shakti, that Shakti Kundalini energy. And how do you best do that? By strengthening and purifying the divine feminine and masculine energy in your being so that you really polarize them and then they come together in union in the Sushumna Nadi. And that's your Kundalini energy rising up from the root chakra all the way through. So that's really how you're kind of working with those energies. So all of us have masculine and feminine energy in us. So all of us have masculine and feminine traits at different times, depending what we're doing, how we were raised, what we're doing. So our journey is to bring our feminine and masculine into balance harmoniously. We say purify, but it's really it's making that harmonious, getting rid of the traumas or the triggers that go into connection with that. And you're working through that. So when many people go, oh, but that's a female thing. I mean, the one thing I will say is female is when you say left and you go right. That's definitely a female wiring of the brain. Yeah. I go follow the hand, just follow the hand, whichever way it's pointing. But I'm joking. But but otherwise, what we go through, what we experience, the traumas we experience, the difficulties, the suffering, that's human. That's male or female, doesn't matter male or female. And there's an understanding then. I just see all this finger pointing that goes on. Yes, there is a way that you can step up in different ways. Yes, there is a certain energy. But, it does, if you're in a same-sex relationship, one person will be more predominantly feminine in their energy and the other will be more predominantly masculine. Why? Because that's the polarity that creates the attraction. It has to exist. Do you know what I mean? It has to exist. So we can work on all that, but we've all got those traits within there. And I just see this sort of finger pointing and this abdicating of responsibility. But there was something else I was going to say that's gone out of my mind, but I'm sure it'll come back.
One of the big kind of explorations I've had all summer actually is looking at the masculine that has become separated from the feminine, which my guides would call the militarized masculine, and the feminine that has become separated from the masculine, which my guys would call the collapsed feminine.
Yeah.
And For me, the way the world heals, the way the collective picture of the world heals is Tantra, and true Tantra, and the aligned teachings in Neo Tantra, because the militarized masculine has to stop protecting the collapsed feminine and start supporting her. And the collapsed feminine has to stop rejecting the masculine and start supporting them.
Yeah.
If that happens, then so much of what we see going on in the world changes, in my opinion.
I would agree. It's interesting because I'd turn around and say that it's like at some point in history there was a revolt against the divine feminine. I don't know what the purpose of that was, or it's not really been revealed to me yet. But at some point there's been a revolt.
No, you're not in this show.
But there was a revolt in some way against that divine feminine energy. So, some people with logical scientific minds might say that there's a logical reason for that, because we went from, tribes to agriculture to, then needing resources, and women became a resource. So they will say that from the logical perspective. So when there was no issue of resources, women were revered as givers of birth and life force, and the divine feminine was honored. And the masculine served not served because it was dominated, served because it wished to, the honoring of the life force there. And there was a balanced role of the feminine and masculine supporting each other and enabling each other. And then with agriculture coming along, it's like resources became more demanded, and then there's warfare between tribes, and women are an item. There's no life without life. So women became a commodity to be owned and dominated, or whatever. So that would be the logical way of going through it. I don't know what the real reason is, or because we know that there's many magical and mystical aspects to it.
There's magic
that we don't fully always understand. But for whatever reason, that went into collapsing the feminine. There was a fear of the feminine, and you see it through a lot of traditional religious stuff. There's a fear of the feminine energy, made to be dirty or sinful or whatever.
Is it in traditional Tantra, that fear of the feminine?
Now you ask an interesting question. So, I would turn around and say, I don't believe at the true roots of Tantra there ever was. I think through the way that the global society has traveled through patriarchy, that there may be a misinterpretation sometimes of the superiority of the masculine over the feminine. So you will hear things said like, it's much easier for a man to enter into divine consciousness than it is for a woman, because they have more activation at the higher chakras. The woman is more earthbound, so she's stronger in the lower chakras,
Even though the woman's womb is the portal to the cosmos. Right, like
my face right now, you would see what was going on. But yeah, exactly. And if you actually understand the true, so the true teaching of Tantra is, it's interesting because it's like, it's the muddle up with labeling and words, and then perceptions and societies and cultures that come in and make things turn. So if you go back into the purity, what we're talking about. So if you talk from the Indian perspective and the names, so they'll turn around and call the great consciousness Paramashiva. Paramashiva, which means great consciousness, yeah. But most people hear Shiva as the Lord Shiva, so it's masculine.
But Ma is
Paramashiva, yeah.
Ma, grandmother of the great Shiva, is what I hear.
And Ma means great. Ma also means great. It's greatness and mother. So it's there's so much play in Sanskrit words, but it's mother and greatness. But it's Paramashiva, and if you take that Shiva is consciousness. It's the universal consciousness where there is no masculine or feminine. It's pure unity. There's no concept of division or separation in any form or shape. So when I'll say that in a minute. But so there's no separation of form. There's no feminine or masculine. That is not the man on top or the woman on top, however way you want to take that. It is unity. It's the oneness. It's the unity. There's no separation. And then as the divine consciousness has the impulse of the concept of creation, a conscious thread forms the impulse called Shiva. It's still divine consciousness. It doesn't really mean man, right? And the response to that is the formation of energy, Shakti. Yeah. So Shakti is everything that is in the manifest form. It's like the mirror to the consciousness to reflect and see and perceive. So we've given that essence of masculine energy because the consciousness is the container. Most people think that the consciousness, that the energy contains the consciousness. It's not. The consciousness is the container. Yeah. And it's forming Shakti. It's creating the container around which all the energy exists. So if you look at your body and your fields, the most condensed part of your body is your physical body. The most condensed, dense part of you, at the core of you, is your physical body. Your energy field, your consciousness is emanating out and around you, and your most divine aspects of your consciousness are the widest fields of energy emanating out from your heart, from your Jiva Atman. Well, according to the teachings, and certainly through my experiencing of energy and consciousness, I would turn around and say that's what I experience and know and understand to be happening. So that's there. So it's like there's no masculine, feminine in the sense of man, woman. Yeah, one is conscious, and one is emission of focus. It's solarity, and one is receptivity, nurturing, movement, dynamicism. Mm-hmm. Yeah, receptiveness. Yeah, and they're two energies that work, and they're not meant to be better than one or less than one. And then if you come into the form, they also turn around and say every woman is naturally tantric. Yeah, not just because of the womb creating life, but there is this. She's connecting heaven and earth. She's connecting the divine consciousness to the earth and bringing through that consciousness to the earth. So she's no less connected to that. So it's like saying when you meditate, it's easier for men to reach those higher states because they're able to easier box or focus or compartmentalize, whereas women are caught more with the energy of the emotion. But then women are able to process emotions more easily and not be trapped by them necessarily. If you want to play that game, do you see what I mean in that process? And yes, there are some qualities that are stronger in men than women, but I don't think it is. And so I do see sometimes, I do hear sometimes in traditional schools a little bit of this male superiority in it. And then you see the other extreme where everyone is being a high priestess, And it's like, don't get me wrong, I very much believe there are a number of initiated priestesses and people that are there, but there's a bit too much of that. Everyone is, and everything, that goes through there. There's journeys of initiation. But so for me, it's like, how I perceive it and how I feel, which doesn't mean it's true, it just is my perception, is that the divine feminine and divine masculine energies are equal. They're equally as important, and the only way that everything exists is through a great honoring and a great respecting, and the ability to honor the different gifts that come in, and to polarize that, and to allow the magic to happen from there. And that's where we have our beauty, our harmony, our peace, our balance. And when you have that in harmony, there aren't traumas and triggers anymore.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. There's this big disconnect in society at the moment, especially in the Western world, between females and males, and it's probably by design, but it's almost like the powers that be, the 1%, they're turning us against each other. And my algorithms, like, I rarely use social media, but my God, I go on there and like women are just hating men and men are just hating women. We don't need men, we don't need women, we can do it all ourselves. And they just like, and then their algorithms feed their beliefs and their friends feed their beliefs, and it becomes like this feedback loop, and it's ridiculous. Like, as you said, like, men and women both have their pros and cons, their strengths and their weaknesses. And the reason why we're attracted to one another is because we're meant to balance it out. It's not a competition. We're meant to work together. And I 100% agree with you that like women are naturally more tantric, 100%. They just are. It's definitely something that I observe. So whether that's again some society thing that suppress men a bit, but it's just so obvious that women are just naturally more in touch with their emotions, with their spiritual powers, with their gifts, with just feeling into things. I think for men going down that tantric path, it's innately it's a lot rarer to see in today's society, I think, but it's getting better. Even for me, you know, like I have a lot of sort of blokey mates, you know, and I would be, you know, in the minority here for someone who's really in touch with that stuff, but I know many women who are. But yeah, I just completely agree. We are both equal, and it's just people have to just see that equal doesn't mean you're both the best at everything. You know, it's you both have your strengths and your weaknesses, and together is what makes this perfect union.
And also, there are also two-spirit people. Like, I don't want to not talk about two-spirit people, because I believe Tantra comes from the two-spirit realms of consciousness. And so I just want to say that there are two-spirit people in this conversation as well.
I don't very much believe that, because that is actually, you know, the two-spirit people were the people that were able to guide from both perspectives, or are able to guide from both perspectives within that. And there's actually a level of greater spiritual maturity, because what we'll say is the more you, well, from a tantric perspective, we're saying is the more that you spiritually mature, the less you're driven by the desires of the lower chakras, yeah, and therefore the less polarization there is, because you're coming into the merging. Yeah. And the merging is where the two-spirit people sit. It's almost like it's almost the level of Vishuddha and Ajna chakra in that energy that sits there, that there's more predominance of that for the two-spirit people, because there's less polarization there. There's more unity there.
And I'm glad you mentioned the word merging, because actually in the last land Tantra journey I had this incredible moment where we were on the tour in Glastonbury. Ekbalu was there. There's a big ceremony for the 999. And I was being shown by the land that in the age of separation, where everything is separated, we're even separated from God, you know, the only way the soul could come in to incarnation was through grief, because grief is the love that can reach past our time space perspective. And I was being shown that the purpose of war on a really vast level was so Gaia could grieve in the age of separation and keep circulating the souls in. And then I was being shown that that was partly because the male and the female in separation were separated. And that if you think of the male as light and the female as magnetism, when they don't just come together, but when they merge, what's created is an energy of reflection. So the mirror energy is the energy of magnetism and light together. This is what I was being shown. And that is when the soul or the beloved or the divine can come in without grief, and therefore without war. And so I was really seeing that it is the practices, the teachings from traditional Tantra, Neo-Tantra, men like Ekbalu coming into Tantric awakening, women learning to forgive each other, us recognizing the two-spirit people, is how peace on earth will one day happen.
What you've described in one breath, in a way, is actually the core essence of Tantra. And, you know, because so it's literally there's 2 or 3 things that come in, but there's a core essence of Tantra, because the enlightenment comes through the union of the divine feminine masculine within yourself, like I was talking about, and then you have the energy run up the Sushumna Nadi that creates the opening, the union between that. That's the pure Tantra, and you can work with that in lovemaking as a couple to awaken that in each other, yeah, or you can work with that within yourself with the energies, yeah. So you can bring union into yourself. The more in union you are in yourself, by the law of resonance, the more you will emanate that energy for others around you who want to come into union with you, whether, I'm not talking about necessarily sexual union, but want to come into, because they can feel that resonance of unity, of groundedness, of oneness, of peace within you that's there. And then that magnifies and through the law of resonance amplifies out. And then what you're saying about grief, I have had a lot of journeying with the Divine Mother, with her taking me through the grief of ages. The grief of ages. And so what you were kind of saying was very interesting for me, that this is the grief is where the love can come through, where this can come through as well. And one of the prayers I do for the loss of lives that happen in this world is, a deep gratitude for those souls that have chosen the journey of sacrifice to awaken us through the grief. So that's actually one of the prayers I do daily in that. So sorry, when you were saying that was really hitting home.
And your prayers really brought, even you saying it now, it's brought that. I can feel the energy with which you're praying. It's really sacred. I want to come back to this wonderful statement you made about the responsibility, and just ask if somebody's listening to this and they're inspired and they want to initiate, what would your best advice be about how to come into the responsibility of the magic?
Very much more open question in that. Know that everything is a mirror. I know it's said so many times on so many podcasts and spiritual teachings, but it is the truth. Everything is a mirror for you. So whatever you're seeing is within you. If you don't like something, it's something you don't like in yourself. If something is triggering you in somebody else, it's because you actually are a form of that. Either you are an extreme of the opposite of that in an unhealthy way, or you are emulating what they are triggering in you. So everything is a mirror, because if that part of you was balanced and harmonized, it would be water off a duck's back.
True.
It would be water off a duck's back. You would just look at that person with love. You would understand exactly where they are. You'd have compassion for them, and there would be no trigger. There would be no blame, criticism, judgment, guilt, shame, victimization, victimhood, nothing. You would just have love for them. You wouldn't need to say very much. It would just be water off a duck's back. That's when you know you're harmonious. Yeah, I have a smart, I say it's a joking statement, but it's actually a very true statement. The day I go home and I can journey with my mother without one trigger coming up, I've reached enlightenment. And I love her dearly, but she is a test, because she knows what, your nearest and dearest know what buttons to push. Do you know what I mean? And that's your deepest roots of that. So the day I can go and nothing can trigger me in any shape or form, then I know that I've reached complete harmony in that essence itself. So yes, so the biggest, you don't need a teacher, but it's good to have someone that you trust, probably not a friend, but someone who's more neutral to you, a coach maybe, or a mentor of some sort within that is neutral, so that they can guide you and you trust them, because you need to explore. It's very difficult to look at that mirror because you have blind spots and you're projecting things outwards onto others, and you don't see, and even the best of us have blind spots. I'm holding my hands up here as I say this. Even the best of us have our blind spots, because the more work we do, the deeper it goes. you know, more to the root we get, and the more blind we are to it. So we do need that. That is what relationships are meant to be. They're meant to be a gift of mirroring to us, you know, what we are needing to work on within ourselves. And it's a two-way, you know, it's a two-way process. So if there is love and respect and honor, which if you go into times where you had community with tribes, with elders, and people were raised in that tribe and everybody knew them, you know, when any dispute happened, the elders and the community sat in a circle. Everyone knew the personality and the plus and minuses of the individuals that would be in dispute. They would know that, and they would hear the stories, and they would hear what's there, and the wisdom of the elders that have gone through many, many, many versions of watching many, many people travel through all of the same crises that we do, because they are quite similar, would have been able to give really good sound advice and to heal that. And that healing of that dispute would heal the community. Because a dispute in community is a dispute between two people is a dispute within the community, and the healing of that dispute between two people is the healing of the community. And the community healed is the land healed. The community in disruption is the land in disruption.
And this is, see, you've put so beautifully what we're seeing on the collective that is so horrendous in some parts of the world right now. We can do inner activism for, and we can do relationship activism for, because that is a reflection of our collective consciousness. You know, that is the reflection, like where our global community is at, is also a reflection. And every time we learn to support each other, we are chipping away at that collective reflection as well. It's relationship activism, right? Like, it's relationship activism.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, they always say, you know, if one soul is converted, I don't know, and I'm not talking about that missionary conversion, you know, but it's where it kind of comes from. But when one person converts in resonance. So if we say in Tantra, the greatest gift you can give to humanity is to work on yourself. Because by the law of resonance, the work you do on yourself changes the vibrational frequency within this realm at all the different levels. It impacts through the law of resonance the people around you. And it changes their resonance, and they start to wish to change their resonance, and then they change the resonance of the people around them. So as you say, it's a relationship activism. And that one bell, that one pebble in the water, spreads loads of ripples outwards. You know, so yes, absolutely. And so that's, you know, sometimes you know, you can sort of say it's a bit of spiritual bypassing, or we're just going to sit over here and ignore what's going on over there. And again, if you're tantric, you can't do that, because you're in this world of this world. So you need to speak up and you need to speak out, but you need to do the practice and the work on yourself and the working with others to help create that expansion, to create that reflection of the light and the expansion of that light and that.
And I know we're out of time, but I just want to pick you up on that, because there is that spiritual bypassing. You know, we speak to activists on this show that are very like, guys, stop meditating and like do something about this. And then we speak to people that are more esoteric and are looking at it from these like collective shadow work and inner activism point of views. But why did you say, if you're tantric, what is it about being tantric that means you to be truly tantric, you have to be in and of this world as opposed to meditating on a mountain?
Because you are spirit embodied. You come as the soul. You're spirit embodied. The soul sits within you. Your journey is both for the spirit and for the embodied world and realm that we live in. So if that's what you believe as a tantric, living in this world. You are celebrating the divine creation. You are working in guardianship of that divine creation. Our responsibilities, as my partner would always say from a shamanic perspective, we have rights, but the minute we have those rights, we have responsibilities. And the minute we have those responsibilities, we have to have knowledge. And from that knowledge comes wisdom, and it's a cycle that then feeds what you understand. So if you want the right, if you have a right to water, then you have a responsibility to protect and bless and look after the water. Yeah. If you have a right to shelter, you have a responsibility to maintain the land and the shelter, in the form of shelter that's natural for the land and honors the land, but honors us. So it's like this is the rights and the responsibilities, the medicine wheel of this.
And presumably, the more responsible we become, the more rights we will be given.
Yes, and the more knowledge and wisdom we're given.
More rights to the divine we're given. Wow. I want to come and sit in Scotland and drum in the rain with you.
Same.
It sounds amazing. And
you're both very genuinely welcome. I was saying to John, I really want to invite you to one of the ceremonies, really. And he's so passionate with the land, he's so passionate with this land. And there is so much holding with the goddess of this land, Bridget, who's the goddess of all the Celtic lands. So yes, you're both very honoured, and we would both very much love you to come and support us.
Thank you so much.
And
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Your wisdom and your integrity and your sacred responsibilities really touched my heart, and I know it's going to touch so many people's hearts. It's been such an incredible episode. I have one last question. Who should we have on the show next?
Who should you have on the show next? Oh, gosh. Gosh. Of people I know, from someone I know? Oh.
Whatever comes to your divine heart.
If you wanted to do a session on the goddess, you could speak to my partner, John Carstairs.
Amazing.
And if and if trying to think, and if you wanted to talk, you've got people already with that, but with the Magdalene lines, you could have a word with Margot Lex on the rose initiations and on the Magdalene line.
Yes, please. Can you put us in touch with both?
I will, absolutely. And I really, really hope to meet you, Ekbalu, in Ekbalu and in life. So the invitation is. Where are you based, by the way?
I'm based in Australia, but I'm hoping to get overseas more frequently now.
You make sure we're on the list to come up to Scotland.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you, my lovely lady, absolutely.
I'm not saying that I'm there. Let me know next time you're drumming in the rain.
I will. I actually was almost going to text you from the equinox, because we were on Glastonbury tour about 2 days after you.
Really?
We were there.
Because I saw your post, and then like 2 days later, we were driving down to a beautiful friend's wedding, tying of the knots, traditional way, down in Penzance, and we stopped off, and because he'd never been to Glastonbury tour, so it was like, so you've just been there, and you just done the activation there, and I was like, oh wow, that's beautiful. I can feel your resonance there. But yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much, both of you, for inviting me on, and please. Just let's stay in touch with the sharing. And it's been a real pleasure and a real joy. I can really feel the connection that you guys have there with the work that you do. So I'm really grateful to have people like you looking after the land.
Just if anybody wants to find you, we'll put the link, but what's your website, or how can people find out about how to work?
The easiest thing is to find me on the website, and I'm just putting new courses up. As I said, I had some time out, and I've been doing some festivals and workshops where people just ask me to come along. But I'm just launching the courses again, up and live. So the website is obviously www.alchemyofliving.co.uk. And you can find me on Facebook under Melanie Harris, and Mel Harris Living, I think, is Instagram. I'm trying to remember that off by heart. I should have it in front of me. I'm not very good with the social media stuff. As you were saying, I'm not very good with that side of it. I kind of just work with what's brought to me. But yes, people can find me there, and have a chat with me. Come and have a chat with me. I like to know what people are wanting to understand or explore about themselves, and then from there, I can guide them into what's best. If they're wanting to explore through the tantric path or the shamanic path, I can guide them into what's best, for them to start their journey and to explore. Yeah.
So much. Such a wow episode. May the land be with you all.
Oh, thank you.
If today's episode touched your heart and you want to come into greater relationship with Mother Earth, visit landtantra.com and get involved. Your truth is part of this conversation, and we would love you to reach out on socials and let us know how it landed. And if it really inspired you, we hope you share it with others. Let's add more wow to our world.